Hello, everybody, and welcome to this virtual meetup of Enterprise Data Science Architecture Melbourne. And today we are very honored to have David Krikheli, who will be presenting on first principles data governance. And at the moment, David is a senior consultant at Ascension, where he helps customers identify their data requirements and implement respective systems. I hope you enjoy our webinar today, and you'll notice that we have a chat functionality. Please use the chat functionality, chat to everyone, enjoy, ask questions. We have polls functionality as well, so we can ask you polls questions. There's a questions functionality, so you can put in questions into the official question asking system. And any comments you have, throw it out. Usually I think we'll do the question answering at the end, but write them in whenever you are ready. And usually my favorite part of these events is the question answering part at the end. That's when we have fun. And please say hello in the chat. At least say hello, so I know you're there. And with that, without any further ado, I'll hand over to David. And yeah, David.
Slava, I'd like to extend a big thank you to you for transitioning from the already popular in-person type meetups to the online format. It's so good to be able to continue this tradition of communicating on interesting topics, especially in these challenging times. It was great to notice the number of attendees grow in a lead up to this event. So the topic for today's meetup is first principles data governance. And I'd like to quickly explain what motivated me to elaborate on this topic. What I noticed when liaising with some prospective customers in pre-sale conversation type settings is that they ask for guidance to help them raise their game and move to the next level of maturity on the data management arena. As part of such change, they may want to acquire fancy data processing facilities such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and analytics. What has become evident is some businesses are facing substantial disruption associated with data. They are trying to undergo digital transformation. In recent times, this effect has certainly been accelerated by COVID-19. Here's a quote from Gartner. Apparently, 69% of boards of directors accelerated their digital business initiatives following COVID-19 disruption. Almost half of boards of directors anticipate changing their organization's business model because of the pandemic. One doesn't need much time to spend on LinkedIn or Google News to find manifold evidence of this. As part of my research of how to efficiently help my customers, I've looked into industry best practices and thought about them. And this presentation is an attempt to summarize my findings. So today I'm hoping to deliver some new views to the audience and test this information delivery approach along the way. So, an observation, in some cases where organizations are trying to move to the next data capability level, there is an issue that manifests itself as a gap in their data governance practices. It can be a trivial gap, easy to fill, but for the purpose of this presentation, a more interesting case would look like one where a considerable degree of complexity exists and needs to be resolved. So the next question to ask is, can data governance practices be very complex? And the answer is yes, they can. So to demonstrate the nature of this type of complexity, we'll have a look at a few examples. On this particular diagram, on this slide, we see a significant number of data-related areas of expertise. These are types of data management activities as defined in the DAMA Data Management Body of Knowledge version 2. The nature of this type of complexity is such that the constituent elements or sectors of this wheel are sophisticated areas of expertise. And in a typical large organization, they are normally entangled in intricate, complex mutual dependencies. Another interesting thing about this diagram is that it shows that this discipline is technology platform agnostic. In other words, there are so many aspects to consider before we can even start acquiring relevant technology platforms. This is another interesting document that comes from United States Department of Defense. Here, data governance is linked to a coherent set of capabilities, guiding principles, and goals united under a concise vision statement. Now, ideally, I should be able to blow up this picture on the right, but I don't see how I could achieve that. So if the audience have any controls to achieve that, that could help to be able to read the content of the picture. But the diagram recognizes that the governance capability is guided by various principles, such as data is a strategic asset. There is a collective data stewardship in the organization. It talks about data ethics, data collection, access and availability, etc. Interestingly, it also links data capabilities to goals whereby data needs to be accessible, understandable, linked, trustworthy, secure, and so forth. So they have taken effort to describe goals. And this document too is technology platform agnostic, and to me it looks quite abstract, with little connection to the traditional areas of expertise, like those shown on the DAMA wheel. So here's one more example. This is a data governance framework document from Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. To me, it looks even more abstract. It talks about legal, regulatory, and governance environments. It talks about ethics, policies, guidelines, and procedures, structures, roles, responsibilities, compliance considerations, and data as an asset. Again, just by looking at this list, one can tell that health is a highly regulated industry in Australia. What's interesting about this document is it mentions policies. And this is important because if there is no explicit command to carry out data governance tasks, people just will not do it. So authors of the document have made it clear that someone senior in the organization mandates the data governance initiative. The responsibilities is another interesting constituent here, because everyone may think data governance is a great idea as long as someone else is doing it. So need to state responsibilities. And one more observation. It's almost become a cliche to describe data as an asset. So we've seen a few examples that show that a complexity is there in the data governance field, and it needs to be dealt with. Now let's ask, how should we start? And it's always useful to define boundaries of the issue at hand. Defined boundaries give us initial exposure to the conceptual landscape, and they also give us confidence that there aren't going to be any surprises once we have completed our work. So there can be different forms of boundary definitions. For example, a list of assumptions and I've chosen to use an explicit definition of data governance for this purpose. Now, there are many definitions around, data governance definitions around. Some talk about data governance being a blueprint of data management activities. Some others explicitly link it to areas of expertise such as data quality or security. Another one states data governance is a best practices framework for managing data assets. This one's more specific. Interestingly, it mentions data assets again. Now, almost every prominent data platform vendor have their own definition of data governance. I've chosen to use a good old classic DAMA definition, which is data governance is the exercise of authority and control over the management of data assets. Now, some questions that normally pop up when I face the task of handling something complex. How do I identify the most relevant constituents and then drill down to better understand the composition of the matter? How do I slice and dice the conceptual space of the challenge? And answers to these questions normally lead to an action plan of some sort that can be summarized as divide the complex space into constituents and handle them one at a time, slowly but surely. This is not a unique approach, of course. It's been known since ancient times, and a well-known name, divide and conquer, attributed to Julius Caesar. In pragmatic terms, though, to me, this approach translates into the following points. So, know where to go. So, need to have a sense of direction to succeed, and that's my vision constituent. Know what to know. There are always knowledge gaps to fill and certain behaviors or habits to master. That's my culture constituent. And know how to go. Need some supporting arrangements in place to support my endeavor. That's my structure constituent. And this is exactly the breakdown I will use to explore data governance from the first principles point of view. So, vision. There's no point in doing data governance just for the fun of it, right? It must deliver benefits. Be the organization in question profit or non-profit, data governance must deliver benefits. Directly or indirectly, the expected benefits are always linked to a capability to deliver economic value. This probably explains why a vast number of data governance definitions provided by various sources explicitly mention data as a strategic asset of any organization. And as an illustration of it, a common theme appearing in all the three example documents we've seen is data is respected as an important or strategic asset. To be in a position to establish and evolve data governance practices with a value proposition in sight, it's important to possess an intimate understanding of nature of the business and exactly how various data sets support core and prospective business functions. And in this context, there is a multitude of questions to ask about specific data sets to understand how they help a business deliver value. Examples of these questions are shown here. Is the data set involved in our core business? Does it have impact on supporting functions such as compliance and audit reporting? Does it have impact on our ability to detect service failures, security threats, and incidents of fraud? Does it have a potential to optimize our business processes or power innovation activities? Other parties likely to become interested in buying it? How do I know if the data set has real value at all? Is there any particular business function it supports? One needs an intimate understanding of the company's business strategy and roadmap to be able to provide confident answers to these questions. And this makes it clear why a delegation of data ownership to technology is not always a good idea. Some argue that data should not be treated as an asset unless it's turned into information, information that has real economic value. Others describe data as a non-interchangeable type of asset. Yet another opinion emphasizes a property whereby data is not consumed when it is used, as are financial and physical assets. There are also costs of housing data, storage, backup operations, data cleansing and transformation processes are amongst those. Some of these views are more important to accountants than data practitioners, but a common theme across all these is a use of technology to forge a competitive edge of the organization. And there are various technology initiatives that can help achieve the objective. Some of them focus on the development and optimization of data processing systems. Others are cost reduction initiatives. So here are some of the many examples of them. Master data management practices that create favorable prerequisites for sharing important data within the organization. 360 degrees views that enrich data sets with value-add attributes and increase the appeal to external customers. Modern architectures that optimize distribution and simplify consumption of data amongst cooperating parties. Data consolidation systems necessary to comply with regulatory requirements. Analytics solutions enabling users to improve quality of business decisions. Adoption of artificial intelligence and machine learning methods powering innovation. Successful planning and execution of such technology initiatives requires a very clear understanding of organizations' business priorities. And without a tight alignment of technology initiatives and business priorities, any of these activities is likely to rather drain company funds with no noticeable benefit. And obviously that defeats its purpose. It is a symbiosis of business priorities and technology initiatives that ultimately drives monetization of data assets. And it is data governance that ultimately supports such symbiosis by establishing relevant controls. Let's talk about culture. If data assets have such an important role to play, then why is it that there is only a handful of companies that manage to successfully implement their vision? At a glance, in this century, it should be very easy to collect data, apply modern software to it, and get benefits out of it, right? Research shows that there is only a small percentage of organizations that can successfully link their data analytics capability to the actual business practice. Analysts often lack time to deliver profit creation ideas because their time is consumed by data cleansing and preparation activities, and that makes it hard to focus on the core data analytics domain. There's sometimes a lack of organizational readiness to apply insights provided by analysts in practice. Clear vision is an important pillar of the data monetization pathway. However, efforts of one or a few visionaries alone cannot possibly take the entire organization to the next level. We tend to operate in an extremely competitive business environment that tends to absorb not less than 100% of our capacity. So there is hardly any capacity left to experiment with visions of individuals. So it has to be a combined effort of all staff in order to deliver the desired outcome. Ultimately, it is behaviors and values of all staff that manifest the data monetization vision in the form of imminent benefits. There's typically much to improve on this front before any benefit can be realized. Some questions to ask here are there feelings of being unproductive, frustrated, or stressed out when using various data-centric systems? Are discussions of data-related issues being unproductive because of uncertainty surrounding basic data management concepts? Do people struggle to understand each other because there is no common understanding of terminology used in the organization? Does initiation of a data-related conversation result in a sly grin, insinuating that the person lives on another planet? So there may be a significant internal resistance, making it hard to introduce any novelty. A dedicated effort may be required to facilitate cultural change. The act of fostering data culture typically falls into the overall organizational culture domain, and it can be facilitated on the back of the change management process. Through this process, organizations can develop required capabilities by maximizing communication, stirring up motivation, training the people, encouraging them to share knowledge, and praising the champions. The goal of such change is to foster organizational culture where all staff perceive data as an important asset. Organizations that have undergone such change collect data with a single purpose of transforming it into insights and otherwise useful information. This helps proactively support business strategy and make decisions based on facts quickly and efficiently, time after time. I've heard an interesting term recently, data citizen. Obviously, it should mean a person whose values and behaviors are consistent with organization's data culture. A key element required to foster data culture is data literacy. Data literacy is the ability to read, understand, and communicate through the use of data. It is data literacy that brings people and technology together in a harmonious environment, so much needed to develop the required behaviors. Now, data literacy can sometimes be propagated through the organization via a central data excellence team that champions various data initiatives. To assist with this, it's important to establish a single language that promotes common definitions of data terms and concepts used in the organization. Tale has it that the construction of Tower of Babel was never brought to completion because the language the builders spoke was confounded. As they could no longer understand each other, they stopped building the tower. The moral of the story is that a commonly used language is an important prerequisite for a collective effort in a pursuit of desired outcomes. In a data-driven organization, data itself becomes such a common language. Notably, it can be efficiently supported by various metadata tools such as glossary, dictionary, catalog, and lineage. Structure. So vision and culture are important pillars that data governance leans upon. However, these two soft elements alone are not sufficient to implement a practical data governance solution. An additional hard element is required to implement the required logistics and bring the vision through culture to life. In a pragmatic sense, this element helps to make business objectives-oriented data management decisions and monitor the focus of the management routine. There are multiple dimensions of this element, most notably a people management framework that arranges data governance roles and responsibilities and naturally fits in the organizational structure, and a range of frameworks that help develop a data governance strategy and drive the development of organizations' operating model. Organizations are often described using a hierarchical structure, and this arrangement prompts for a respective multi-level categorization of data governance roles and responsibilities. Here's an example list of such levels. Steering committees, they represent the most senior leadership or executive level. This is a very important component of the overall structure. It warrants traction and propagates the sense of importance into all parts of the organization. A data governance council, it's often put together to represent relevant departments and functions of the organization. This level ensures that all stakeholders are represented and contributing to the strategic data governance decision-making. Subject matter experts who look at the use of the data across lines of business, and they are sometimes called data domain stewards. They accomplish the strategy at a tactical level and play a critical role at maintaining a single view and uniform interpretation of data across the entire organization. These people have a weak association with specific business units. Then we've got operational data stewards. They are responsible for day-to-day operations, such as the defining, creating, provisioning, and using the data. These people have a strong association with specific business units. A common tendency is that most staff are involved in some relationship to data. Soon, literally all staff will be using data in some capacity. Some of the goals of data governance is to help staff to recognize that, to help staff with a few things, to recognize that they are using data on a regular basis and understand what data usage norms are expected of them. Ethical use of data is a very important constituent of the norm and ensures clarity about what the appropriate use of the data is. Another goal is staff to know data governance policies and stewardship rules defined for various levels in general and at their level in particular. The rules would typically cover data management aspects like classification, retention, disposal, access, sharing, change approval, etc. Yet another goal is to realize that the policies and rules are needed by and vital to the organization. A dedicated data governance office can be established to help achieving these goals. It functions as a supporting structure that facilitates effective communication with all staff and day-to-day data governance activities. The office can coordinate relevant parties. It can drive data literacy and training initiatives, a compilation of policies and procedures, audit and reporting activities. So, in summary, the data governance paradigm supports a provisioning and utilization of quality data to achieve business objectives. It involves many intertwined practices and domains of knowledge, hence the high level of complexity associated with it. There is a vast amount of information available on the net containing recommendations on how to establish the data governance discipline in an organization. Most of the sources agree on starting small and growing big instead of committing to a big bang type implementation. However, some of them are prescriptive and take a rigid approach of listing artifacts and functions involved. I hope that the divide and conquer approach we have taken in this presentation sufficiently breaks the data governance paradigm down to certain fundamentals. The intent is to inspire the listener to be creative and build a customized solution that meets their unique requirements. And feel free to contact me should you need a sounding board to discuss your requirements. And with that, this